kalneek aya yidat Johan gurus cheese ach tu wujin khasati khana ya Lingít katangi data ya kanach da art Yéil ach tuwdisáakw skach tuwdisáakw a du sa wa wasa I tuwdisáakw gudach sa wa datiach sa kadasa I tuwdisáakw chadasa I tuwdisáakw ha in kainigi kwati a du sa du tuwdisáakw shukwa yuch ayatangi yidat aya tushdat yuchatang a du sa
Yéil halu tuwdisáakw. Flesh tuwdisáakw we kalneek ach son. Nach musket. Yáay tuwdisáakw. Is aan de beginning Yéil Spanish, yuchatangi, dat top school away. Kalneek top you. Kalneek top you top claim. Tuwdisáakw, unsa to away, yuchatang. I could zien ding als Lingít yuchatangi zien. Zal je de heen, she's two of two.
okay cheese kecha tuwdisáakw ha
Should I translate for my mistakes?
like
Yaduchet. Dane yagi away. Yak satini. Skyde yuchet tuwdisáakw autumn jewels blake kalneek. Achlich dupla skyde tuwdisáakw ka graphy jewels blake kalneek yuchet USA. Yandashani Florence Johnson tuwdisáakw yuchet USA. Daklasha ayachet. Kleika kadalun talk ach katagu. Nashada honey tekun tuwdisáakw ka late Doug Smart Senior blake kalneek. Goch nach het sati. Daisling Kwan ayachet. White horse kuch siti. Zintakahini aya ye yati yida. We University de kukau. Lingít yuchatangi yuchatang nafashagu. Lingít hashagun ha kusti nafashagu. Achoni ka kuatlatum anaklahash you do yourself ha Sam Johnson blake kalneek. Nashada hani ishkitam ka daisling kwan yandashani. Ka achoni ka kuatlatum kadishi you do yourself ka besikuli blake kalneek too kokatan ka daisling kwan yandashani. Chat she de hain kuatlatum chat yawaka gonna cheese lakarakach ach stuga ye chatiti do chaklaud ye yawaka idat tunak ka ikat tuhatan ach kuatlatum
Mentlatuatsin, Gaitaka, Kudeshiak, Yatki Waitaku, Ka Aklatsu, Shakat Ka Akuatlatum Akla Kagane Yuasal Kani Jules Blake Kahena, Akla Zisku, Adugu, Away Atlechwas.
Okay.
Hat I Auchletu, Shukat wait kach hat. Akla tsu, Klinge Yuchatangi ku atletum city. Ka Ganashish Akhe Isa Achi, Ka Ganashish Hat Min Ade.
Cheese. tuwdisáakw.
Okay, yak wacht tini. Kai te kate yo gat tuwdisáakw. Look nach adi nach gat zati kayashka hit. You tuwdisáakw hanaka hidi. Shukanedi yatki ayachat. Kin chuchwan. Ach daka nuku uch zati. Shuk gunachlu shayich. Kuna kau ka shiaraka kwana we muhan. St. Anne's Yéil kudiksi anach ya andagan yasayich Yéil yati anushi ani kanesh di hit ayachat eklan kunish chish.
Okay, cheese.
Elias Yochat Duasak, Santa Kahich, Away Hat Kudzati, Santa Kahich, Ye Hat Yati, Kim Yudosak, Kla Pad Yudosak, Ish, Kip Ka Dlok, Jiwu, Tuya, Kla Kua Texas, Aya Kudzati, Ka Tuya, Ish Kua Indiana, Aya Kudzati. Joy.
Okay, that's cheese. tuwdisáakw.
Jeremy Simmons Yáay, Nushachwen Yuchat tuwdisáakw. Kalneek ya nagudi at shuatan Lingít kalneek Nushachwen. Seattle kuchzati. Atleka kajin ta kushikago yede kuchwatin kayak Yéil yati yidat. Gayes deyis ye jechane. Kuchwatini achtu sigu. Groshish Akhe Isa Achi.
Okay, cheese.
Hello,
Ah,
thank you, Chief. I would like to go ahead and speak Achtawasigu, Achkwata Tani.
okay.
Please correct me if you'd like. Sani Yuchat Duasak, Yechna Hasati Akwan, Yech Tehit Ayachat. My father's clan, Wushkitan Yeti Ayachat. And my mother's father's clan is Wushkitan Gathan Ayahat. And I like to add Achat Has, my paternal aunts, and Achish Has, my father's people. Kalneek from Berners Bay, and Shaga from Youngs Bay. And my mother's side, my maternal aunt is Klachas. My first time doing this, so please forgive me. Sheep Creek Mary. In other words, I'm from here. I'm Kwan. Goodness cheese. Thank you for listening.
Okay, goodness cheese. You did qua, tuwsa?
I'll go, but mine's a little different. I guess you said to share what you wanted to, so here I go. Utsaga tuwdisáakw Liz aya sayi Minneapolis kutsi. I forgot that one. Sitka yati. Nach awe ak sik kanas ginach awe ak dachchan. Fairbanks de ka Denver de you ha gut. Wasa kalneek. Cha tlak Yáay Hadatu askutuyikya nachgut Yéil kudach kashuk uchach ginch Yáay chanach Hu atlatu hastu ide yanach dashin. I'm gonna try this one. I don't know, but hasak yat awe hastu tu sigu ke hasguk latsin aya achtua sigu. Gonna cheese.
Goodness cheese. Okay,
Okay. Didn't want to interrupt anybody. Shtuga khatati satini. Digitgiayu khatluasak. Dleitka chinach katie. Ganana na khatsati. Degatana khatsati. Degatan ka holikachuk aya ach dakanu khu. The late William ka Agnes Kruger tuwdisáakw. Laverne ka late Billy Turner Dutch Khan Ayachat. Deloichet Kwan Awe Khan Shitka Chenach Yati. Gunatish Ach Eat Yitsatu.
okay. Cheese. I guess I could.
Sha'a ade kwa ye hat agach ye u ti ayach u fi. Andres Camacho buhat tuwdisáakw Juni Heg ye hat uwasa. Ach tla Mexico ku ach ish Colombia ku gis ach tuwasigu. Yauk dak na cook ach tuwasigu. As ich chatsati ta'ku hin ganashti ta'ku kwan de shu ye chat yati where ye dat kuklegus ka siudak wusitan ganashti.
Oh, okay. Good cheese. Tuwsa uyach yidat.
Yéil Chachali Pachad Yadi Ayachat Nanya Aya Dapanuch Chitaya Hanakahiti Stukin Pan Ayachat Juno K Kaditi Anchorage Puxtati شتغلتو خديشان أختخني كخدسة كود بقتي أخ قصتي attorney خدستي أخوات كواسة خدتي vacation أختواسكو Arizona day قادقين
Okay.
أخ أي كيكين كإشقين أختواسكو شاو يدو سفق في قام قين قلوت بس كان قيمة which
Okay, good cheese. Okay, خايو ها. أدوسا يا يدت.
Lingít chénach each da you had do a sock ach fleece gooch you USA. Guski Kwani chénach Dave Kita Jr. you had do a sock. Kitch Khan ye hat kudzati Portland ye hat yati ach kayach ach slach gate ach katliguk high schoon gunal cheese.
Okay, good cheese خا. خوني نخسا ويخ. تكتو هانكه. Kleinach, dachnach. Tlach acht.
Hello. Ganach aya yaada yidu asak. Ganach hari chatzati. Yech na chatzati. Kitchka an. I'm from Ketchikan. I can't remember the rest. Ganesh Jish.
Okay, good cheese. Kleinach age uyach. Tlach acht. Gwasachide cygwaha. Gwsa. Ach, tu as y gwych sy'n tiniada. Let's we at Yáay awe ha anikuk ayakaw du juhit chak satnach we ka danawak you tuwdisáakw du toan aya wunug ak ish hechwasaku we at katsku yechwaji lukach adich wasati lukach adich hasati ya ach shagun yach de Yáay you do a saka ani a kok aya ye hasji wunayan ya danawak awe du seek Kosh to thick you do sagen. Ho awe uwa sha an kadachtzin. A klein awe has du yetki. Klein nacha ko a gushtihin you do sagen. Kosh to thick oe dakleo sha. Dakleo e dich husati oe gushtihin. Gushtihin awe hutsu gwall. Naska dushu awe du yetki. Naska dushu nach awe. Klein nacha ko a kash de kate. Kash de kate awe ach klar. Ye awe hu wush uwa sha, ya ach ish wush has wut de sha. Skandu you do saken kleit chach inach ko a tim twitchel, you big chasami awe hu. Ya ach klar, shukach addi, chadeki nach sati. Ye awe ye chat ye titsu. Chone ya ach sai. Kleide heen away niet genaket Yéil. Aus satin away we Yáay. Kanachawe akawa ket we Yáay. Yéil a data we you to watan. Yéil to tuwch with the cheese. We Yáay yikte with the kini. At away dark day with the kini. We Yáay. Gwelly sa cw, cwnachawe iaw gygwacha, cwnachawe chayash. Ya kinde ua chak. Kin chwka, kina aya yewudi. Yéil aus sa chwka aus sa tin du taich yewudi. At away daku sa git. Ayik da way, kone aya ye uwaji. Ha! Ne chwaki way aya. Ya yikt. We Yáay kone we awacha. We Yáay. A klein ya o a yikte a kausacha. Yéil, kanachawe a kawa ket, which the cut at kanachawe acha. Wana ni sawe klesh to toash, go wait a yacheti. A jawe shoot out the aqua ya yikt. Konea ya awat sikwe Yáay. Would do it siki ya ya kanachawe de chayak it's kwasa awacha. Tuwdaye wuti kwa ausatin. Kone aya wushashla. Shtekat we Yáay yikt tai. Ha! Konaka chayak Yáay tai. Atwe we tatsuk kone we awacha. Ausatin we shtekat a yik addi. Ho! Wait, atsuach tuwasaku. Awacha. Chukle awe a teich awacha. Klei hooch. Yáay awa jak Yéil. Ja atwu tlahash a yiktaya. Yewe du tuwch wut lichisha dachawe wugudi. Just du cheinach. Kleik a kawaduk. Yéil cha. Asad ka kone Yáay dat. Kone awe ko a awal chais. Yak leo de kasahash. Yak leo de. Yak leo de. Nachlahash. Yewe du toasaku. Kanachawe tleo witleo. Yuch. Kanachu. You do sakawe Yáay kat. Ikwas ake wuti. Kwasla tuwan. Atwu tlahash. Nasawe awa akho a adat. Adatki. Adatki awe awa ach Yéil. Konea ya ke uwa ik. Yáay iktachawe hasawa ach. Aduski kakanachan kahashi. Aduski kakanachan kahashi. Ha! Hast du hiti ade awe. Hast du taujahi. Ja hast du klar. Hast du ish awe. Hast du in kan kanikit. Ik haswo art de katwe ant kini. Ja hast du jishaguni. Hast du jiye wutiyen. Hast du awa ach. Yáay yiktach. Aduski kakanachan kahashi. Ha. Yáay aya ayikt kone aya hasawa khash. Gwasliat aya chawe hasawa khash. Ka wushtach aya hasakawa ak. Wushtach yike. Chikle aya ka wuti. Ka kuge awe we wush. Gwaswa Yéil klestu toash go wudustini aya. She a shei ka atai te katu daye wuti. We dako a kinde o te kin hel hosa kudasa we. We dako a ye awa atushi. Kone. kalneek kindew de qine at. Which the cut will ku has aus teen. Wega Yéil hutsu de key dew de qine. Tel kushtin qoa Yáay qa a shea which the cut da it. Hutsu we ant qine has our teen. Ho! Kindew de qine. Ye awe ke has our ich. Ye awe kanach kindew de qine. Nani suwe ke has our ich. Qoyach na de qine. Aqa awe with the yach with the qine. Ant de awe with the qaq. Tini a yakonach awish with the ooze. Qa a kawa aqawe qanach awe yansh with the knee. Qach with the goot we Yéil. The cutway aunt Qini has to just a goony teen we Yáay. A dai a dati has to one. Has our su. Has our hash. Has to us a good nail day away has a cow jail. The cut we Yáay glee. Yéil has a cow woos. Ho! Qanach awe yak Jackake we Yáay. Clegg, just how Sue say yata. What Yéil. What do a achake a yikdach dasa? Has got clegg dasa. Quash a yikdach away ko a what do a achi at clegg. Kesh a de a gale got to achi away at yikdach away. Atoski kakanachan kahashi. Oh, how? What do a ach? Yéil Ye awe ho ach clay the hin which a good and qini ayahas o te we Yáay. Has our ha katay hooch. Hooch away at the cut has. Has cow the kid. Eka away. At away a nakas wo art. The cut has to just a goonity. Gow the way cow the hit Yéil Kanahawe a cow a get the cut we Yáay. Just a chagu away a yewuti. The cut at a dugu, a tie, a glee, a yik addi. Just at aqia kudzati. Yáay ati you do a sock. Yeti yidat. We Yáay aqi. Gashi de kakweni click in a ha. Okay. Let's just walk through what did I say? I was see like what kinds of things you guys were catching. And then I'll tell you what I can. We'll just walk back through it. One of them's, it got to a story. I'll tell you that. Yeah. Ravens walking on the beach. Anything else?
Well, I knew a part he was cutting a hole in something and he was breaking that hole bigger and bigger. In the beginning, I think you're introducing like a bit about yourself, your father, your mother, and then maybe it was a naming story.
Yeah. Anything else? I'll just walk you folks through it. It was kind of a lot.
Raven had an appetite, and so he ate the herring.
He ate a lot of herring, yes.
And he ate something bigger, and finally he got a whale. I think he ate that, and I think it was the second or the third one he couldn't finish up. And so he called the people to come and cut it up.
Okay.
And they did, and then at the end, he caught another whale. But he didn't get any because they cut it all up so fast.
Okay. Anybody else catch anything else? Anybody online got any thoughts? Here comes the walkthrough. So that's fun. I really enjoy listening to folks speak Lingít. We're going to start adopting a pattern here now that we're a month into it. where on Tuesday we're going to start with you folks sharing some language. We'll come up with the idea together on Thursday, stuff to work on over the weekend. But here's the rule. I'm not going to correct anything. I will if you want to send it to me beforehand, or if you want to send it to me afterwards. I'm happy to provide feedback. But in the atmosphere of creating a safe language space, even if you ask me to, I'm not going to correct it as we're doing the thing. Because I want to be in a space where there's actually no correcting going on. And it's okay. Like, the big thing is communication. Communication is always what we're after, not perfection. There's a whole bunch of stuff we'll keep working on. And if I can hear you folks speak, I'll know what kinds of things for us to work on. I've got a plan, but then the plan gets supplemented with what folks are doing. Feel free to throw me an email. I usually stay up pretty late. Sometimes I got big projects. But I'm happy to take a look at stuff and see where you're at, and then give you some ideas as well. And then sometimes I'll also say, I won't say like, so-and-so gave me this, and so I came up with that. I'll say, here's how you say this thing. Here's how, and sometimes there's a few different ways to say one thing. Sometimes it's speaker preference. Sometimes it's stuff that I'm still learning as we go along. So while I was listening to you folks talk about yourselves, which I think you did a wonderful job doing, I found this picture of my great-grandpa. Actually, it's my great-great-grandpa. So the person's on the left, I said, well, this was in this place called Yáay, which some people call Yéil. We call it Yáay. It's right next to tuwdisáakw. The person on the left, his name was Donawak. His English name was John Donawak. The person sitting down, his name was Yáay. And Lingít, or in English, is Dennis Isaacs. And I don't know the boy who's standing there. But I was saying he's probably tuwdisáakw Addi, because those two are both tuwdisáakw Addi. It's tuwdisáakw Addi land. And people used to pack things over the trails. John Donawak had a daughter named tuwdisáakw, and several kids. One of them was a daughter named tuwdisáakw. Her English name was Marion. People called her Mary. She married a man, she was Dakshawedi. She married a man named Ankadachtsin. His name was Bert Dennis. They together had several kids. One of them was named Gushtihin, who also had several kids. One of them was named Kalneek. That was my mother. She married my father, who was Yupik and Sami, and he was given a Kagwantan name. Then, let's stop this so I can keep an eye on the chat. I started thinking about, I'm going to tell you where my name comes from. So then I had to tell you the story. So I think it's good to listen to things, but I think it's also good to be in the same room where sometimes someone's telling a story. So Raven was walking on a beach. Here's the English version of the story. And he looked out and he could see something, and it was a whale coming up to feed on chasing these herring around. And when a whale feeds, sometimes it comes up and it really opens its mouth wide. And when he saw that, he thought, I think I could fly into them. So he flew out to sea, and when that whale came up to eat a whole bunch of yummy herring, he fell in. Inside the whale, he said, ha! Wow, maybe it's like a home inside this whale. And that whale would eat the herring, and they would come pouring in, and he would eat them all up. And he just kept doing it. They'd pour in, he'd eat them up. At some point, he didn't want to eat them like that anymore. So he built a fire. Then he started to barbecue them. And barbecue herring are really tasty to Raven. So then he was eating that. But then the heat started to melt all the fat inside this whale. So he sees that and he goes, That looks delicious. So he starts eating that. While he's eating that, he looks over and sees all these organs of the whale. It's like, whoa, let me try some of that. But when he ate the heart of that whale, he killed it. Then he's just he's just drifting around inside this whale. He thought he could just walk out the mouth. But it was all closed up because it's dead. So there's this thing he does. In the stories, they'll usually call it Yéay. This is how he started to wish for things. When I worked with Shakshani, Marge Dudson, when we would translate these stories, when he started doing this, she said, he's starting to shukachchus, which is a complicated Lingít phrase that means composing a song that requires a response, or singing that song. But I think it also, in the case of Raven, means he's going to sing this thing into being. From a language perspective, it means summoning the end back to the beginning. It's a fun word. I like it. So he starts to say, let it float to a fine sand. And he says it kind of, when he says, he's like, and it does. That sand was really sandy, which means there are no rocks. This place called Kalneek. Kalneek is a dry bay. There's a place in dry bay, well, I guess I'll save that for later. So in dry bay, drifts up, and then he's sitting there, and then he hears something around him. What did he hear around him? Let me do a little check-in. He heard kids. He heard these kids around him. Adatki or atyatki. Two ways of saying it. A single child would be atkatsku. So he begins to yell, Aduski kakanachankahashi, which is really wild. Like I got several versions of the story, and they usually say it pretty close. Sometimes they'll say adu anyatki sawe kakanachankahashi. So adusa, who, kakanach, over a person, ankahashi, let them cut it. So I don't know why he says it that way. It's very hard to translate. I usually say, who could let a person cut some person out of here? It gets really complicated. But a simple way would be to say, who could cut me out? But he says it this very certain way. It's very interesting. So the kids run home to tell their parents. Everybody comes down to the beach with all their tools. Because they're like, what, there's some whale there? Guess we'll cut it up. They're going to cut it up and haul all the pieces home. But then they hear it too. So they cut a hole in it. And they start to pull it apart. And right when Raven thinks it's big enough to go through, he was gonna go through, but he realized he didn't want people to see him all covered in blood and melted whale fat. He doesn't like people to watch him eat either. So he sent this thing up, some kind of decoy. I don't know what it was. But when it shot up, it made this song that went, that's where the name kalneek comes from. So this thing shoots up, everybody's looking at it, so then he shoots out as well. But he can't see because he's covered in whale blood and fat. So the people start to yell, "Takendir, just fly on up." So he flies, he just keeps going straight up. At some point they start yelling, "Kuyachna, fly straight." So he straightens himself out on de Wujakak. And he goes and lands behind the point of land. We 18 atakoe kanakshutta us kawa ak yanshutzene. So he went into the ocean and he cleaned himself up and he tried to really, what did Noah like to say? He really primped himself. Yanshutzene. He got himself all ready. And then he walked back to where the people were. He gets back and all the people are cutting up this whale, cutting up the fat, cutting up the skin, cutting up the meat. They're going to bring it all home. So he asked them, "Wow, did you guys kill this whale?" They said, "No, it was our good fortune. We found it." He said, this part gets complicated. I was getting myself confused trying to remember because he does really complicated things when he talks. But he said, "Did you guys hear anything?" They said, "No, we didn't hear anything." Said, "Oh, did you maybe hear something coming out of the whale?" Didn't hear anything. "Is there any chance that somebody heard something saying, aduski kakanachan kakashi?" And the people said, "Oh yeah, we heard that. Yeah." So then Raven says, "Well, one time I heard people found a whale and they ate it. Everybody died." And they said, "Really?" He says, "Really." So they left. And Raven finished the job. He ate the tail, he ate the skin, he ate the meat, he ate the fat, but he left the bones, and there's a place in Yáay called Yáay. That's where the bones are today. So that's the story. It's a really fun story. There's several different versions. There's a Raven book coming out at some point that has several versions of this story from several different speakers. Any thoughts or questions? Yeah.
Does this mean that the story comes from Yáay?
Yeah. Most of the Raven stories, a lot of them take place in Yáay, which is interesting. And then a lot of them take place like they don't have a specific location, some of them. And then I think the ones that do are Yáay and this place called Daikinu, which is Hazy Islands. It's out pretty far from Prince of Wales. He lived out there, and he had a rock house in Yáay. Thoughts, questions?
So just something I noticed, is it like a customary in their introductions here, like in the coast, where you introduce like your family first and then yourself? Or, because I've heard that, but yeah, so I was just kind of wondering about that.
I think most people learn a pattern to say, tuwdisáakw, sati, like whatever the clan is, and then they usually move into the father's people, and then sometimes the grandparents and the dakanuku, and then where they're from, and their house. But that's kind of the order that we usually learned it in. And then the thing is trying to just nudge folks away from saying ayachat all the time, because it's just like an easy pattern. So you just say, you'll say your community ayachat, and then you'll say your clan ayachat, and then your clan house ayachat. And I think it's a pattern that gets people going. But then we just try and tweak those a little bit with things like born here, from here, this is our house, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wanted to see if there was a possibility, because I really like how the Maori people introduce themselves with tying themselves to like mountains and bodies of water and stuff like that. So I wanted to learn how to do that with like maybe the aces, because all of the mountains like here have Lingít names. So to be able to like include that, but in the future.
Yeah, and it goes back to this big migration point too, like going probably probably everybody coming up the Nass River, starting to settle out, usually mostly around the Ketchikan area. Some point, some of their language probably comes in and they start mixing with each other. Big flood. Some people live on the mountains, most people go inland. When the flood subsides, they all start coming back. There's a glacier to go under. Some people go. Some people say, not floating under a glacier today. So they go back to the interior coast, start blowing up and spreading all over the place with these major northward migrations. I think the tuwdisáakw migration, the tuwdisáakw migration, let's see if I was missing one. And then they start to go up, the inland group starts to go around to Klukwan and come down. And then they start moving kind of all over the place. And then you have this few other migrations, the kalneek migration, the southward tuwdisáakw migration, the tuwdisáakw migration, or the tuwdisáakw migration is what we were called at that time. Then there's a few groups that come in who weren't Lingít, who became Lingít. They were Atna and Yáay, and then they became their own groups. Then you had groups just sort of going all over the place. But it's really fun to sort of look at that stuff and then to tie yourself to specific place names and migrations and stuff like that. I think it's really fun.
Yeah, like a name story too.
Yeah.
To be able to do that, I think is pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Speaking of people on the different movements, what is the basis of the nechadi, the one that can intermarry either?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the nechadi are down in Saxman primarily. They use an eagle, the halibut, the beaver. And I was trying to understand, like they could marry either, but then someone else said, well, once they cross a certain area, then they get considered one or the other. And it's a good question. I do think there are certainly several different groups that ultimately became Lingít. Lingít is not just one. You know, I know some people like to say, like, I'm a full-blooded Lingít. And it's like, well, what does that mean? Because there are so many different groups that just became Lingít. And it gets political nowadays as well with identity and with sometimes appropriation and also with having your identity like legislated to you. So it's on a card and then you got to sign your kids up for the card. And so it does get complicated. But I do think that there were other groups, and sometimes people try to use this stuff too to try and like be like, we were the first and the original, and then these imitators came, and that kind of stuff is really divisive and I think probably oversimplified. But I do think as far as nechadi and tuwdisáakw and Yáay, those seem to be some of the big original sort of groups. And then the nechadi, it'd be really interesting to talk to some of them, do a bit more research. They know their history, but as far as when we go back to sort of the tlawgu, like the pre-flood times, what does that look like? Because you could see an awful lot of raven clans coming out of kalneek, and then tuwdisáakw coming down and spreading out and sort of being a little bit different. And then you seem to have the Yáay and the tuwdisáakw being sort of the two major contributors to the eagle clans. But I think it's sensitive stuff, but I do think it's stuff we should talk about more so that we just understand how it works. And then to sort of move beyond the who was here first and who's better, because it's like, oh yeah, this group came out of this group, and then that group came out of that group, and then they're super related. Because you could be sitting there, if we don't study that stuff, you'll be sitting there mad at someone because they're using your stuff, but it turns out you guys are the same people. Okay.
I was trying to write down words that I recognized. Something you said one a lot Kunach. Is that, I wasn't sure, I was looking at the verb for to go by car or by boat. Is that same one?
Well, there's chuch, and then kunach is really. So it's an adverb, so it just emphasizes. So you can say, tuwdisáakw, it's raining. But then when you look outside and you got like the sheets of rain, that's kunach tuwdisáakw. It's really raining.
Okay, so at one point you also said kunach aweh Yáay, so that'd be like, that was really good.
Yeah, it was really, it's really good.
Would ega also be an adverb? Ega, like
Yeah.
truly, right?
Yeah. So eka can work as an adverb. It could also work as an adjective. And then it could just work on its own. Like someone tells you something. Like when Raven said, all these people died. They say, eka ge? Like, is that true? It's like, eka away. Yeah, truly. And then you can have eka at, a true thing. Then you can have tuwdisáakw, which is lying. And I think the verb literally is pretending to raven, which is wild. Because if you just go raven like tuwdisáakw, like if I stood up here and said, tuwdisáakw, I think that's like, I really faked it tonight. Like I stood up here and acted like I knew what I was doing, but I didn't. Which is fun. I like that that's a verb because I feel like I do that a lot and it's fun. Yáay. Any other thoughts or questions? Any language stuff you all were thinking about?
Renee,
Ah,
I've been trying to put a little bit of Shingik in emails and then provide the translation to people. And so they asked for something, and so I started this email. And I wanted to say, here is mine. And I've come up with two possibilities, maybe even right. One is yadu, and the other would be yadu.
yeah, so yad, I would probably start with yadu, and then and it could be a noun, or if you just say, here's my thing, Yáay. So Yáay is a really good one to, it's just A-A-Y, high toned I. And you could throw a pronoun in front of that, like let's say there was just something here, like let's say I came in to teach, and the other teacher from the previous class was walking out, and there was some kind of thing sitting here, and I'd say, how, Yáay again? Is this yours? It's like, Yáay. Adu Yáay saya yata. Whose thing is this? And then Yáay. It's my thing. That's what those little Katelity would be saying in the Finding Nemo. But it was a question, right? They're kind of asking, is it mine? Because in English you could do that with just your tone. Mine? It's Yáay. That's what it is. Yáay. Yeah, so usually yadu Yáay. Yadu yuch atang. Whatever the thing is.
Sorry to keep going on this, but if I was going to say, like, let's say this, I thought this pen was really good. Could I say, kunach Yáay? Like, this is really good. I mean, sorry, kunach Yáay?
Kunach Yáay. And then so we had Yáay. So you can also say this one or these ones with yata. Yeah, if you didn't want to use, because sometimes you're just going to skip the noun, right? And you could say kunach Yáay ya kuhida. This pen is really good. Kunach Yáay ya kuhida. But you could also say kunach Yáay yata. It's just a little bit of a faster way to get there. So as we're sort of looking at this stuff, weh, right here, over there, right here, over there. Yadu, it's right here. Yadu kuhida. Here's the pencil, or the pen. Wedu kuhida. There's the pen. Yata, this one. Waita, that one. And it's a fun word because it could be these things, those things. And it's totally okay to say for people, because it could mean, it really means the ones. These ones, those ones, this one, that one. So it's not like you're dehumanizing someone to you, because I was talking with an elder one time, and she pointed out someone, she said, wait, ask that one over there. That's how you do it. You do it in basically these two words. This one's really good.
If you're using this, like this abstractly, like maybe you're talking about like a student club you're starting, and I want to say this is really good that you are doing. How do you refer to like when it's not like an object?
Well, yeah works for something that's kind of right now. So that's where you get like Yáay today, Yatak this winter. You could have, if we're at a ku'ik, a potlatch, we could say, this ku'ik is really good. So yeah, it could be more of an abstract concept. You say, this thinking of mine is like this. Okay, take 5, come back in 5 minutes, and we'll do something a little different.
Finish for your story.
Okay. Okay. Let me check real quick with folks online. When I put a slideshow up like this, do you folks see, is there parts that you can't see? You can read everything on there, it looks like.
I can see it all.
It's good.
So what it should do is you should have the whole screen, and that sort of pushes the images over. Okay. Okay. Just checking. I was pretty sure that's how it was. Okay. So we'll do a few pages from this. Then we'll go back to the beginning and get workbook and keep working through that. So we did this one, right? So then I thought, well, let's look at some versions of this verb, to tuwa, who's going to tuwdisáakw. So if I just went down here, I'll say them. Y'all repeat after me. We'll say them once. Tuwdisáakw. Tuwdisáakw. Tuwdisáakw.
Tuwdisáakw.
Tuwdisáakw.
Tuwdisáakw.
Tuwdisáakw.
Tuwdisáakw.
Tuwdisáakw.
Tuwdisáakw.
Tuwdisáakw.
Tuwdisáakw.
So now I'm going to ask for the translations one at a time. But if you've given one, take a pause and let someone else have a chance to try. So how would I translate tuwdisáakw?
I want.
I want it or I like it. Those are the two ways you can sort of interpret that. I want it, I like it. What about tuwdisáakw?
You want it or you like it?
You want it, you like it. Tuwdisáakw.
They want it or they like it.
Yéil. They want it, they like it. She, he. I have been just using they. I I'm not trying to change the Lingít language. I don't think there's any gender in that whatsoever. So I just say they. What about tuwdisáakw?
We want it, we like it.
Yáay, we want it, we like it. Wasn't there a song? I want it, I like it, I want some more of it. Isn't that something? Tuwdisáakw, tuwa. No, I'm not going to do it. Tuwdisáakw.
You all want it?
You all want it, you all like it. Wherever you want to put that apostrophe. If you're putting that after the A, go ahead. Let's do tuwdisáakw. They all want it. Oops, all them? What am I doing here? They all. Probably says on the next one.
Also compressed to they all.
Oh, they'll? They'll, okay. Tuwdisáakw.
People want it or like it.
People want it. People like it. It is wanted. It is liked.
Kalneek,
Ah,
does that have to be, it is wanted by people? Or could it be by an animal?
it has to be people. So ka is the fourth person. So the way we sort of talk about these, we say first person, second person, third person. The speaker is talking about themselves, that's first person. The speaker is talking about the person they are talking to, that's the second person. The speaker is talking about someone else, third person. I, you, them. But then we can go to plurals. Us, y'all, them all. Then there's a fourth person, which is sometimes interpreted as someone, sometimes interpreted as people. Kind of depends on how it's being used. There's different types of pronouns. So the pronouns just sort of saying, it tells you who's doing the thing or wanting the thing or what the relationship is. And it's usually going to be one of those 7 things. There's a few others that are pretty interesting. But we'll start with this, right? So in beginning Tlingit, we really sort of focus on this first 6. Me, you, them, us, y'all, them all. Then we try to really focus on those 6 through like what we call independent pronouns. Here I am, there you are, there they are, here we are, there y'all are, there they are. Yadichat, waydu wa'eh, waydu hus. Yadu uhan, waydu yuhan, waydu hus. Or waydu hu. I think I said hus the first time. Waydu hu. So those are independent pronouns. They're not linked to anything. Chat, wa'eh, hu, uhan, yuhan, hus. This is the second category of pronouns that we start to learn. Possession or a relationship. My, your, their, our, y'all's, them all's. Theirs is, I don't know how to do that one yet. I'm saying them all's. I'm just going to stick with it. So when we start looking at how verbs change, some of them are using possessive pronouns. Once you hear ach, I, du, you're like, oh, that's the possessive one. Achjin, ijin, dujin, hajin, yijin, hastujin, achtla, yitla, dutla, hatla, yitla, hastutla. So really pushing through these 6 and really sort of getting to know them. But then you could also have ka, people. There's a high tone version one, there's a low tone version one. We'll just watch for how it's being used. Any questions about these?
Kalneek,
Ah,
ka is either singular or plural depending on context?
yeah.
Rather than being one or the other?
It's usually plural, because when you say people, it's not like a person. So it's getting into, so it's sort of like people like, I don't know what people like, but say like, people want good weather. I don't know, whatever they want. I don't know, I'm not going to speculate on what people want. But you'd say like, ka. Like sometimes I'd say, sometimes, life of a person's mother is difficult. A lot of work. Raising up a little baby and all that stuff. Ka yagi would be Mother's Day. Ka ish yagi would be Father's Day. So it just means a person's mother, a person's father. But it's usually a plural concept.
Does this also tie into kawu with that version of ka?
That one would usually be, and this is where it does get tricky. So let's look at, so these are a sort of main pronouns that we're kind of focused on right now. On the left-hand side, my, your, their, our, y'all's, them's, people's, someone's, me, you, them, us, you all, them all, that person. So the one part where it gets kind of tricky is I do believe there are two different forms of ka. I would consider them, in my brain, separate words. Because there's some of them that are attached to things like, you could say, Yadichun ka awehu. They're a straightforward person. They're honest. They just get right to the point. I wouldn't assume that that's a male. But it could be. Because there's another one that means a man, a male person. That's the one that can take the possessive suffix. It is a common noun, not a pronoun. Because you cannot possess a pronoun. Like you couldn't say, ach wa'eyi. Like it just does not match. But you could say ach shawati, ach kawu, and it's getting what we call the possessive or relational suffix. It's a good question. So we're going to start practicing how to use these things and just how to spot them. Because sometimes we're looking for these fill-in-the-blank things. What Lingít does a lot these days is we try to write the language in this code, not to make it more complicated than it is, but to say, here's this list of things, this list of things. You got to learn those lists of things and then learn how to manipulate them. The Mohawk language has gone through a transition over the past 5 to 10 years. But they used to try to teach it in these whole language chunks. But the language gets so big, a single word gets so big. But then like, okay, let's teach people what these little chunks are, because there's all these little chunks of either meaning or function. Teach them what those things are, teach them how to manipulate them. And then their fluency rates have gone way up. Because you can only remember so much stuff before you're like, well, why is it wuti and then yati and then yekwati and then, but then you start to learn this stuff and it does untangle it so you can put it back together. We did this one, right? Is that your paternal aunt holding her child? No, that is my maternal aunt. Who would like to read this? Finish cheesh. Achit away. Dudlak asachan. How would we interpret this?
That's my son.
That's my son.
He loves his sister.
Yéil away. Okay. Ach yit away. My son. So how would I say, that's your son? Iyitawe, right? That's our son, Hayitawe. That's their son, Hastu Yitawe. Dudlak, so that is, there is a gendered kinship term right there. A male has Hunch, older brother, Keek, younger brother, Dlak, sister. Don't matter, older or younger. A female has Shetch, older sister, Keek, younger sister, Eek, brother. Don't matter, older or younger. A female shouldn't really say ach hunch. A male really shouldn't say ach shetch. Those are gendered terms. So, once we get the du glok, we could translate that as his sister. Asachan. He loves her. Any questions about this one? Time for some loving. Okay, I'll say it. You repeat. Chasachan. Isachan. Asachan. Tusachan. Yisachan. Asachan. So the sechan part stays the same all the way down. This is a very good verb to work with because it doesn't change a whole lot. Cha, I, a, tu, y, and then has, a. So, we might not have done this type before, we'll see. How would I interpret chasachan? It's close, but the cha is the doer here.
I love myself. I love him.
I love them. Yes, I love them or it. So there's a couple things. Like we are going to learn how to spot some things going on here. The big answer here, if you have an object and you have a subject, looking at the third person, this one changes to the letter A. That letter A does tell you that there's both an object and a subject. So this one is actually invisible. There's no mark there. That gets really tricky. 0, cha, se, chan. It, them or it, I love. Now, I do believe this is for living creatures. You're not going to use this verb for your pizza, your coffee, your Wednesdays or Sundays or football or whatever. You can tuwdisáakw those things all you want. But it's like that silly movie where that guy's like, I love lamp. That's what it kind of sounds like if you're going to use chasachan. Because the verb here has to do with like being next to something. That's what the root has to do with. Love your dog, love your cat, love your people. That's what I think the sachan is. You could say chush, or you could say chush or shchadzechan. Chush chadzechan, shchadzechan. Not a good thing to say out loud, but it's not really a self-affirmation to say, I love myself. It's kind of like really being kind of full of yourself. But grammatically, you totally could say that. But here we have chesechan, I, and so here's the big hint. All of these are going to end with them, it. That's what the object's going to be all the way down. So when we start running through these, I'm going to change the subject, then I'm going to change the object, but one of them will stay the same. The goal is to start seeing what it looks like when we start changing that. And this is just a sneak preview because we're going to do a bunch of stuff with these. So, what about isachan?
You love them or it.
Say again?
You love them or it.
Yéay. You love them or it. How about asachan?
They love them or it.
They love them or it, right? That was in the verb, in the slide we just saw, right? So we'll back it up. Tuwdisáakw asachan. What about tuwsachan?
We love them or it.
Yéil, we love them or it. Yisachan.
You all love them or it.
That's right. You all are lovers. Has asachan.
They all love them or it.
Yes. Now let me talk about this hus for a second. There are a few areas in Lingít where the grammar does get a little unclear. Every language has this stuff. Here's one for you. Hus can pluralize. So if you look at these, you got cha, I, unmarked, tu, and y. But there are separate pronouns for I, we, you, y'all. When we get to the third person, we have to use hus, which sits on the outside of the verb. The tricky part about hus is it can pluralize the subject or the object or both of them. So technically, this could be they all love them, they love them all, they all love them all. That's just what you get. But you can use other things in the language which you'll learn later if you need to specify. So you're talking about this single person who saw this other group of people. You put that up into the front. So you give them you say their name. Kalneek, hasaw satin. Kalneek saw them. Okay. Questions? Everybody okay? Well, we got to keep loving. Because if we're going to love him, then the love's got to come back. I'll say them, you repeat, then we're going to run them through. Chatzechan.
Zachan.
Isachan.
Isachan.
Asachan.
Asachan.
Hasachan.
Hasachan.
Yisachan.
Yisachan.
Hasachan.
Hasachan.
Okay. Let me back up to this one. There was a good question in the chat. So speaking of the fourth person, since I did bring it up earlier, this one could have a fourth person subject, which is du. Built, it's not the same du as the one to say du tla. It's built right into the verb. It does look identical, but when it's connected right in the verb, this means people do it or it happens. This is one where if you said tuwdsáakw, I would usually interpret that as that person is loved. So you could say it tuwdsáakw. If you need to lift somebody up because they're feeling down, it tuwdsáakw. You are loved. People love you. So that's where you can get, and so we'll add the love of people at the end. Let's focus on these 6. So let me ask you, predictors, what do you think is going to be changing in this one?
Hat is the object.
Yes. So the first set, we were changing the subject. I do it, you do it, they do it, we do it, y'all do it, them all do it, people do it. Now, love me, love you, love them, love us, Love y'all. Love them all. Then at the end, we'll add people. Love of people. So, predictors, how would I interpret Chetzachan?
They love me.
Yéay. Isachan.
You love me?
That would be Chet Isachan.
They love you.
They love you. Now I had to put an asterisk on here because if we back this thing up, look at that verb. It's exactly the same. So here's another area where Lingít has a little bit of vagueness in it. Every language has stuff like this. So what you kind of have, what you have here, you have zero, se, chan. So that's what you have. You have you, they, love. But in the world of like this Lingít math, let me make this stuff small for a second. You could have 0, se, chan. These two are going to contract the same way. Not with every single verb, but if the object and subject are right next to each other and there's nothing that's going to go between them, you just can't tell. But it's fine, because you love them and they love you. It's all good. But again, you could do some extra work. Wa'ech isachan. You love them. Hooch isachan. They love you. Because maybe I need to tell a story about like you love them, but they don't love you, and I got to console you now because it's heartbreak. It's all right. I'm done teaching. I'll retire. Give all my professor clothes to someone. I guess that's what you do. And then I will write Lingít soap operas. That's what I'll do when I retire. So I got to get all this juicy stuff ready. Like, they don't love me. Okay.
Please don't wait. But people want it now.
Okay, we'll do it right now then. Fine, I was going to try and retire. Asachan. This one doesn't change either because it's they and them, right? So it doesn't matter.
They love them.
They love them, right? So that one didn't change. They love them or Hasachan.
They love all, or they love everyone?
Us. We're the ha, right? So, but again, like the ha, and just sort of some of them, there's this ha tla, and then ha verb. Once you get ha verb, verbing us. So something is verbing us. Yisachan.
They love you.
They love you all.
They love you all. Someone came through town, just loved us all up. Asachan.
Someone loved.
They love all of them.
They all love them. They love them all. They all love them all. It could be any of those. Anybody want to take a shot? Here, I'll do the English. I'll do that part. They love people.
Ku'u?
Huh? Oh, you just say ku'u?
Ku'u?
Well, ku'u is the noun for people.
Ku.
Huh. Kusachan. They love people. You could say kusachan. I love people. Okay. Everybody all right? Anybody got any questions? This is just a sort of, it's just a look. We're taking a look at it. We got lots of drills to figure out how to do this stuff. One verb at a time. Learning how to use these pronouns, though, really gets you a long ways. Who's doing it? To whom does it happen? That's a major function of language, right? Going back to the soap opera, I saw them kissing them in the park. It's really important to get the pronouns correct, right? Okay. We'll do one more.
Writing a soap opera feels like good practice.
Anybody want to read this?
tuwdisáakw tuwdisáakw.
Hey, tuwdisáakw tuwdisáakw. How do we interpret that?
Who?
The who question.
It's a
Who question?
When they're talking about a friend, like are they our friends? Or no, my friends?
Let's stick with the first one. We got the who, but what is the rest? Sawe.
Who is over there?
All of them?
Yeah. Who are they? Right? And so it's interesting too because like there's no verb there, right? Lingít has this, or English has this weird linking verb, is and are, but that's a verbless phrase. Tuwdisáakw. Learning verbless phrase is important because you don't have to do any of the verb changing stuff. Tuwdisáakw. Who are they? Tuwdisáakw. What is that?
They're my clansmen, clanspeople, and my relatives.
Yeah, they're my friends, they're my relatives. This word has transitioned to kind of mean friends. Long time ago, it usually meant they're the same moiety as I am. Then you'd say achkani for opposites. Okay.
Now, is the tuwdisáakw, is that necessarily plural, or would you also do that for, like, if it was just one person there, you were saying tuwdisáakw?
Well, what's interesting, so the hus is this independent pronoun, right? Chat, wa'eh, hu, yuhan, hus. But tuwdisáakw sounds pretty good, but tuwdisáakw does not sound that good. If I were going to ask, who you? I'd say tuwdisáakw wa'eh. Which, did I tell you guys a little story about tuwdisáakw wa'eh? So we're doing a Lingít Macbeth in Washington, D.C. in 2007. It's a whole group of us that were actors and performers and trying to learn all these Lingít lines and memorize them, which was wild because the cast did not really speak Lingít. A lot of them went on to learn Lingít. A lot of it was really trying to get them to memorize and just to teach them these big chunks of language. There's a scene where this guy, I think it was called the porter or something, he's real drunk and being real silly, and someone knocks on the door, "Kuch, kuch, kuch," and he yells out, tuwdisáakw wa'eh. So that was like the line. And just the way that the actor did it, his name was Alan Hayton, was just funny. It was just hilarious. So we're all staying on the same floor in a hotel, so we'd all just go visit each other all the time. Because we're all on a kind of Alaska time, and our schedule was we started rehearsing at 2 in the afternoon, and we were done at 10. And then, so like we'd be up till way late at night because we didn't have to be to work till 2. But one day there was a knock on the door, and this kid, he's like 12 years old. He's just being silly because he thought it was one of us. He said, tuwdisáakw wa'eh. And it was someone there to clean the room. So she was like, I'll come back later. So that one just sticks with me. But the word order is interesting because I think some of them, you'd say, tuwdisáakw. Again, back to my Lingít soap opera. Someone wakes up from a coma with no memory. Tuwdisáakw, who am I? You can say it. And I think it would go in that order. Tuwdisáakw wa'eh. That one, the wa'eh should jump to the other side. Tuwdisáakw hu. Who's that? So speaking Lingít is nice too, because then you got a little bit of a code language, right? Forget someone's name, asking about who this person is. Adusawe, who is that person? Adusawe Yohan. That's how I'd say that.
Who are you all?
Who are you all?
Is there anything rude about asking someone a tuwdisáakw, like to their face? Is there anything rude about that?
I think in the right context it could be fine, but you'd probably say, yeah, like if someone sat down, if someone said adusawe to me, I'd probably say kalneek. Yeah, I'd start telling them my lineage because I probably wouldn't be really sure. I might tell them what I was doing there. So, yeah, it might be a little strange. It might be a little invasive.
Is it more like a knock at the door? Like,
Yeah, that's when it really works well.
Yeah, because then you're not really seeing them, right? And you can be like,
Yeah. If there's a Lingít-speaking world, like one time, sometimes I'll come in at night to do work in my office here. And every now and then you'll find someone in the building who's just camping out. And if we all spoke Lingít, I'd probably say, "Adusawe," which would be saying, like in English, like I saw someone, I walked by them and I looked at them. They went in my office and I came out and there's like a whole bunch of stuff. I don't think they're going to take it. But I said, "Are you supposed to be here?" And they said, "I'll go." Right? And so you can't. It's tough. Winter's cold. I know it. But it becomes a bit of an issue if people are sleeping in the campus buildings, like in our offices and stuff. Okay. But yeah, and adusaakw Yohan. Some of them become a little bit of formalities. I guess it depends on the context. So like, a lot of times when a canoe would come to a community, there would be these formalities. Even though everybody, like the people from Sitka are coming to the Pu'ik today. They'll be arriving on our shores. We know that. We see the boat coming from Sitka. Still, we'll send a boat out to meet them. They'll meet at the was. Just make sure that's you guys. You don't got your hair tied up in knots and washed all clean, so you come here to fight. We just gotta make, a lot of protocols. Then we'd usually coach each other, say, okay, we're gonna escort you guys up, even though we know who you are, we know what you're here for. The leaders are gonna be up on this hill. They're gonna send a messenger down who's gonna yell at you guys. Tuwdisáakw. What does that mean? Tuwdisáakw. Where? Tuwdisáakw.
Did you come from?
Where is your boat from? Where's y'all's boat from? So then, this is all highly scripted. In the canoe, somebody has been selected to be the responder. This is cultural protocol. So they might say, "Sheet kadachawe uhan. Hayaguyaktawe chaknach adi." Our boat comes from Sitka. In the boat are the chaknach adi. Anachsawe ha'ani yande aya yikuchu. Wanachsawe ha'ani yande awe yikuchu. Or I guess it could be yikuch. Why did you guys come to our shores? Hatuasago yikuich iya kuku hayati kunachish hayiki. We want to come and be in your pu'ik. Thank you for inviting us. Then, they send some big tough guys out there, because these were dugout canoes. They would meet that canoe. Nobody's supposed to get out. They would pick the whole thing up with everybody in it, carry them above the tide line. I've seen it happen too. They did it Angun.
Wow.
And they would carry you above the tide line, carefully set you down, and get you, because they said, this is how much we love each other. It's really good stuff to see.
Wow.
Okay, we only got a few minutes left, so I don't know if I'm going to change things up. We'll probably just maybe do one more of these. Then we'll get into the beginning Tlingit workbook on Thursday. So we got another one here. Who wants to read it? Probably be the last one. Because we only got 2 minutes. Better read fast.
I can read it.
Okay.
Usk achit skunde
Sheesh. Everybody. First one. Uchta usk achit. Skunde kukwagut. What do we got here?
Teeth. He's brushing his teeth? Or
Yes.
something to do with teeth.
Teeth. He's the uskin his teeth. How's that?
Cleaning.
The usk.
Teeth
Brushing.
wash.
Or brushing?
My son.
Washing, right? So brushing, would say brushing in English, but the verb is wash. So there's a couple things with this, and then my son. And let's do the second part, and then I'll go through them both.
Skunde, something related to school?
Towards school.
He's getting ready to go to school.
Gukwagut, he's gonna go. They are gonna go. Gukwa or kukwa.
Oh, that's right. You showed us the list of all that.
Those ones will be they are gonna. They are gonna. It could also be it's gonna happen, right? Because the subject is absolutely unmarked. Interesting.
Where, I remember you showing us a slide of all the gugwa and the kugwa. If I was going to search those, where would I find, like, what do I search for?
I would look at the verbal structure handbook. And let me show you real quick, because this thing is an iPhone. I don't know how to say it. So this, and let me switch thing around, new share. Oh, here it is. Okay. So this is called the Verbal Structure Handbook by Zeus James Crippen. This is a quick guide for looking things up that have to do with verbs. It is not the easiest thing to look at. However, once you start learning what all these different parts are, you can start to sort of bookmark things in this resource and go look them up real quick. And I'll show you one right now. Buckle your seatbelts. We're going to scroll through this thing kind of fast. There is a bunch of, it's got the most stuff in such a little handbook. It's like, I was so happy when this thing first came out. But we're going to scroll way down. And what it does is it shows us, this says ga, ka. Doesn't matter what those things are. All that matters, you get those three things in a row, future. Every time, future. So now we've got first person singular, me, or I. These are all subjects. Plural, we. Second person singular, you. Second person plural, y'all. Fourth person, a person or someone. So when we kind of zoom in here, it depends on what the classifier is. That's one of the big parts. But for you want to short, do it like you got a zero group, where you got a, if there's a vowel there, like I could say, k, kwa, sa, khan. I'm gonna love him. Kakisakhan. You're gonna love him. Let's get Gachtusachan. We're gonna love them. Gach yisachan. Y'all are going to love them. With this one, there is a bit of code that's in there. So another place you can go for these, I said I'd do this fast, is we're going to start sort of looking at Hausaneek Hayukatangi, which is, this was the book that I wrote to teach intermediate Lingít. We spent a lot of time in the beginning just sort of running through some concepts at beginning Lingít, just saying, maybe summer was long, maybe, you know, some of this stuff you were just focused on like memorizing a bunch of things, so we're looking under the hood of them. But then this book is intended to teach you all the different parts of speech in Lingít, leading up to studying verbs. So if you do go into verb modes here and to future, you'll get them here as well. So this shows you the classifier. So once you look up the classifier, like I am gonna go home, Neste kakwagut, right there. Neste kakikut, you're gonna go home. Neste kakwagut, they're gonna go home. Neste gachyiat, changes a little bit, we'll get to that. Y'all are gonna go home. Neste gachtuat, we're all gonna go home. So these resources are there. If you're curious, you're trying to, because you can look this stuff up, but your brain will start to find some of these patterns. Then you start to say, okay, let me look up the prefix so I could start making a good guess at what they are. Probably next semester by the time we do get there, but we'll see how we do. We're going to break down all the components that are in there, teach you how to put a verb in the perfective in the future. Then we're just going to smash through a whole bunch of verbs, and you're going to predict what that verb is. And you're going to get really good, and then you'll be able to be at a point where once you look at a verb, you can put it in perfective. It happened right now, happening, and will happen. That's what we're building up towards. But we're done for now.
Sheesh.
Ete dogden, yake khana.
That